Here's something you probably never considered. What if healing was just another form of control? What if every time you tried to fix yourself, you were only tightening the chains? Modern self-help tells you to optimize, to improve, to become a better version of yourself. But Foucault didn't see improvement as freedom. He saw it as surveillance. He saw it as a trap. Because somewhere along the line, growth stopped being about liberation and started becoming about performance. And you've been performing so long you can't even tell who you are beneath the upgrades. Self-help promised you freedom. It told you that healing meant independence, mastery, peace. But beneath the softness of those promises was something cold, a quiet judgment that whispered, "You are not enough, not yet, not until you read more, meditate more, journal more." Foucault's idea of the clinical gaze wasn't just about doctors. It was about how we learn to look at ourselves as patients, as cases, as flaws needing diagnosis. And now you've become the doctor and the patient, the punisher and the punished. Foucault's most terrifying insight wasn't about prisons. It was about how we become our own guards. You no longer need someone to watch you. You watch yourself. You track your habits, your mood, your dopamine levels. You gamify your goals, optimize your calendar, curate your personality. You are no longer just being. You are managing yourself. Like a brand, a system, a resource. This isn't healing, it's micromanagement of the soul. Modern healing looks suspiciously like productivity. We wear our therapy like fashion. I'm working on myself. I've set boundaries. I've cut off toxic people. But who are you performing that growth for? Who benefits when your healing becomes content? When your pain becomes a platform? When your transformation fits neatly into a TikTok trend or a wellness post? We've mistaken display for depth, movement for meaning, transformation for branding. Foucault warned, the more invisible power becomes, the more dangerously it works. And the most invisible power today is the belief that you are never enough unless you're improving. You thought you left the rat race, but it followed you into your morning routine. Now it speaks the language of self-love, but it's still a demand. Love yourself or else. Even rest becomes a task. Even silence becomes content. Even doing nothing is strategic. Foucault wrote, the individual is not to be conceived as a sort of elementary nucleus, a primitive atom. The individual is already a product of power. Your very sense of self, the one you're trying to heal, may be the thing that's keeping you trapped. You thought you were escaping, but what if the self you're trying to save is the very thing being manipulated? You've been told to be yourself, but what if that self was built by the same system that breaks you? Foucault said, there is no power that is exercised without a series of aims and objectives. Even your identity, your tastes, your language, your dreams might not be yours. They were sculpted by the culture you swim in. When you say, I want to be successful, who defines success? When you say, I need to heal, who taught you what brokenness looks like? You're not waking up from a dream. You're waking up into someone else's. Because what if along the way, freedom became a script? The most dangerous chains are the ones that look like freedom. You choose your job, your clothes, your playlists, your therapy style, but every choice feels eerily expected. You're not disobeying the system. You're playing your part in it, flawlessly. Foucault warned of this. Society doesn't force you into conformity anymore. It entices you into it. That's why rebellion feels so exhausting, because it's not just about saying no, it's about finding a self that wasn't handed to you pre-approved. When you reflect on who you are you truly reflecting or repeating? You journal, you meditate, you analyze, but the lens through which you observe yourself was designed by institutions, from school to family to media. Even insight becomes performance. Even healing becomes branding. And slowly, the inner voice you trusted becomes a PR manager for your identity, keeping the narrative tight, the growth linear, the image intact. You are not broken, but the mirror might be. Now, have you ever wondered, what if truth isn't something you find? We treat truth like a treasure to be uncovered, deep within ourselves. But Foucault flips the script. Truth isn't something you discover. It's something that gets produced through discourse, through power. So what happens when the truth you find in yourself was actually planted by someone else? The self-help lie is this, that your truth is in there somewhere, and you just need enough solitude, journaling, psychedelics, or meditation to find it. But what if the journey inward is a labyrinth designed by the very forces you thought you were escaping? What if healing was never meant to set you free, but to make you easier to manage? In the next part, we'll reveal how self-help became the system's favorite weapon, and why your pain was never the problem. You can buy rebellion now. You can wear it on a t-shirt. You can stream it on a playlist. You can post about your disobedience from a phone made in a factory built on obedience. Foucault saw this long before hashtags and anti-system brands. Power doesn't just suppress rebellion, it absorbs it. It makes it safe, profitable, digestible. You scream into the void, and the void sends you a targeted ad. You rage against the machine, and the machine hands you a microphone. So long as your rebellion entertains, so long as it stays within the frame, the revolution has been merchandised. And what does that mean for you? It means that even your most radical impulses to break free, to detach, to scream that this isn't the life you signed up for, might already be part of the plan. They told you to be authentic, but what if authenticity is the new uniform? You dye your hair, get a tattoo, post your trauma, call yourself a misfit, but every expression comes with a preset audience, a niche, an algorithm, a brand. You thought you were escaping categories, but you just landed in a new one. Foucault warned that identity isn't always empowering. Sometimes it's the collar around your neck, because when you name yourself, you give others a handle to hold you by. When you define yourself, you're easier to manage, to surveil, to sell to. The system doesn't care who you are, only that you can be described, and every label becomes a leash. Your sadness is trending, your anxiety is content, your burnout is aesthetic. Somewhere along the way, your wounds were turned into marketing demographics. They don't need to fix you, they just need to know how you're broken, so they can sell you the illusion of healing. This is what Foucault meant when he said that power is productive. It doesn't just limit your life, it creates the very desires, fears, and identities that fuel it. And in that twisted feedback loop, even your ache to be free becomes a tool. So when you ask, how do I heal? Be careful, because there's $1 trillion industry whispering answers in your ear, and none of them want you to leave. Did you really not notice that? Meditation apps, trauma-informed brands, courses in authenticity. Spirituality itself has been streamlined into a sales funnel. You've been sold enlightenment in monthly installments. But real awakening isn't pretty, it isn't profitable, and it can't be compressed into a 30-day program. Foucault believed that power thrives in the language of care, that the most effective control doesn't threaten, it nurtures. It understands you, it promises to help, but help can become a leash, especially when it keeps you dependent. So the question becomes, when you seek help, who profits from your struggle? And what happens if you actually get better? If your healing was hijacked, then what does real freedom look like? And more importantly, how do you know it when you see it? So are you ready to step into the fire? Not to escape ourselves, but to finally see who built the prison. You were raised in the theater, not the one with curtains and applause, but the one where life itself became a stage. From the moment you were told to smile for a photo, to sit still in class, to answer questions correctly, you were being shaped into something visible, presentable, palatable. Foucault knew this long before the internet. He called it disciplinary power. Not through chains or commands, but through the subtle shaping of behavior, expectation, and gaze. You began to live as if someone was always watching. Even now, when no one's around, you still pose. You still curate your thoughts, your actions, your aesthetics, as if some invisible eye is scoring your existence. And maybe that's the most dangerous part. Not that you're being watched, but that you've learned to watch yourself. You've become both the prisoner and the warden, the actor and the audience, the product and the brand. So ask yourself sincerely, when was the last time you moved through a moment without wondering how it looked? It's not just big tech tracking your clicks. It's the algorithm in your head. You scroll, you swipe, you like, and slowly your nervous system is trained to seek what gets rewarded. Not what's true, but what's approved. Not what's felt, but what performs well. And even offline, it follows you. You hesitate before sharing a real opinion. Will it land? You adjust your story. Will it resonate? But who are you resonating with exactly? A crowd you can't see. A culture that keeps changing. A reward system built to addict, not liberate. This is what Foucault meant when he said modern power doesn't repress desires, it produces them. You don't just have thoughts, you're given templates. You don't just feel desire, you're fed a script. And in time, you begin to mistake visibility for worth. You meditate, you journal, you shadow work, you chant affirmations, and yet you're still exhausted, still confused, still carrying a weight you can't name. Because maybe the problem isn't that you're not healing enough. Maybe the problem is the frame itself. Foucault didn't believe in a pure inner self waiting to be uncovered. He believed the inner was shaped by the outer, by the discourses, the institutions, the norms you were raised in. So the deeper you go, the more traps you find. Not because you're broken, but because the very idea of self-improvement was designed to keep you running in circles. Endless work, endless fixing, endless self-surveillance disguised as growth. Maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're just tired of trying to fix a version of yourself that was never yours to begin with. Now, do you know how the real freedom looks like? It's not what you think. Here's the hard truth. Real freedom doesn't always look peaceful. Sometimes it looks like collapse, the moment when you can't keep performing, when the affirmations stop working, when the productivity system fails. That's the fire. And in that fire, something dies. The curated identity, the performance of healing, the obedience to systems you never chose. But something else is born too, a stillness that doesn't need permission, a rebellion that doesn't sell well, a presence that isn't curated, just real. Foucault didn't offer easy answers. He didn't promise peace, but he did offer a gift, the ability to see the system, to name the trap, to stop blaming yourself for being stuck inside it. Because sometimes the most radical act isn't changing yourself. It's refusing to be the person they trained you to be. The final part of this journey holds a truth most self-help can't afford to tell you. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's free. And freedom doesn't sell. It's not that all self-help is useless. It's that most of it is scared of what you'll become if you stop needing it. You were never meant to arrive. That would end the cycle. The books, the courses, the dopamine rituals, they're built like subscriptions. They need you almost free. They need you healing, but never healed. Foucault warned us that power operates most efficiently when it hides inside care, when it speaks softly, when it says, "We're just here to help." But real help, real liberation. It doesn't look like daily trackers or curated mantras. It looks like finally realizing there is nothing wrong with you. You are not a project. You are not an error to debug. You are not a self-improvement schedule waiting to be executed. You are a being, and you were never broken, only misread. Now think, what if the real rebellion is this? Doing nothing, wanting less, being ordinary, no algorithms, no audience, no performance. This is where the machine loses, because it can't sell simplicity, it can't market stillness, it can't monetize a soul that no longer craves validation. Foucault never gave a blueprint for freedom, because freedom isn't a formula. It's what happens when you stop asking for permission to rest, to be, to stop improving, to live like you weren't being watched. This isn't apathy, it's defiance. of a system that only respects you when you're climbing. But what if you stopped climbing? What if you stood still and it all fell away? They tried to turn your selfhood into a strategy, your presence into a platform, your uniqueness into a niche. But here's the truth. You don't have to be seen to be real. You don't have to be liked to be valid. You don't have to grow to be worthy. They trained you to ask, how do I look? But the real question is, do I exist when no one's watching? Foucault knew, and so do you, that true existence starts the moment the mirror shatters, the moment your best self dies, and your real self whispers, I'm still here. If the self-help story ends with perfection, then Foucault tears out the last chapter, because perfection is still a performance, still a role, still a trap. The real end isn't an achievement, it's an exit. From the loop, from the stage, from the belief that your worth is something you have to earn. So maybe this isn't the ending you expected, but maybe, just maybe, it's the one you needed, not to become more, but to finally stop needing to. Because in the end, the most dangerous lie of self-help is that you are not enough, and the final truth, you always were. If you found value in this video, if it helped you look at your development and above all, at yourself differently, show some love by leaving a like, leave a comment with the truth you're ready to live. And if you want to continue growing in truth, join our community by clicking the subscribe button and notification bell. And remember, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.